Wednesday, January 13th meeting of Berlin Personnel Committee. As a preliminary matter, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. This is Claire Pond, Chair of the Personnel Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me prior to me calling the meeting to order. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Sue Terrian,
I'm here.
Tom Bradley,
I'm here this time.
okay. Staff, Margaret Nardowitz,
Margaret's here.
and I see another guest, June Poland.
Oh, hold on. Allow to, there you
I'm
go.
here.
Okay.
Tommy, it's great to see you.
Let's see, anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Can you see Barry there, Margaret? Not
No,
yet?
Barry's not here.
Okay,
Not yet. I'll keep an eye out.
okay, beautiful, thank you. With a quorum of the board present, I call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. Okay, the first order of business on the agenda was the minutes that I sent out. Sue and Tom, did you guys have a chance to read those?
I did.
Okay, did everything look out okay, or did you have any revisions you wanted to make?
No, those looked good. I'd like to make a motion to accept them as written.
Okay,
I will second that.
okay. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor? Aye. Claire Pond?
Sue, I.
Tom, I.
Okay, great, thank you. And that was the minutes of 12:30. Approved, okay. The next item of business was a PAF. We had a PAF on Tim Andre, who's one of our police officers. Margaret, I wasn't sure. I know that was a rate change, but I wasn't sure. Was that because he took a regular position? Did he go from part-time to full-time? Is that it? Or was it just a step that he was in?
It was an anniversary step according to the contract.
Okay, great. All right. So given that information and our review of the PAF prior to the meeting, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the PAF for Tim Andre for the step in rate change.
Second that.
Okay, any other discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor? Aye. Claire Pond?
Sue, I.
Tom, I.
Okay, great. Just writing this down, okay. The next item of business, let's see. Position reviews and advertising. So I think we got one position today, Margaret, that you wanted us to take a look at for advertising.
Yeah, I'll share the screen. It's this job ad for highway heavy equipment operator, driver, laborer, mechanic.
Yeah, okay. The only one thing that I hadn't checked was right now. Okay, so it's a grade 7. Yep. Okay,
Yes.
heavy equipment. So based on the information that's in that advertisement, full job description. No later for Monday, 26. Okay, great. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the advertisement as sent to us by the town administrator.
I'll second that.
I will third that, but I have a question on that.
Okay,
And so do I.
okay. Go ahead.
Margaret, I thought we were gonna kind of rewrite that a little bit. I thought we were gonna break that up like an operator, truck driver, or truck driver laborer, not mechanic, you know what I mean? Drop the
Okay,
mechanic part.
Yeah, that hasn't been done. That hasn't been done yet.
Okay,
So,
because some guys are good drivers and good laborers, but they're not mechanically inclined.
or vice
I mean-
versa.
Yes.
But
I don't know if
Yeah.
it could be broken down, but we'll use that for now because we gotta hire somebody. But I don't know if that can be rewritten somehow.
I think if the personnel committee would like to take that up, I mean, we do have on the classification plan a grade 6 position that, hold on, a grade 6 position that is it takes out the mechanic piece of it. So it's a heavy equipment operator, driver, laborer, but that's a grade 6 with a scale of 1963 to 2509 currently. So there is a different position that exists, but it's not one that anybody holds at the moment.
Right,
Okay.
right. I'm guessing that you would have gotten this from Dave Smith and to try and meet his needs for the town. And I'm thinking that's where you would have gotten the information from. Is that correct, Margaret?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is the exact same position that was most recently advertised.
Okay.
Yes.
Sue, you had a question too.
I just have a question that I understand, and I believe this has to get posted soon. We need this position filled. But my question was brought up by someone else in town. When we have people that drive snow plows, should it be like our police department where we actually give them a radius which they live, to our town?
I'm not going to say no. I would assume that you could require them to live within a certain distance from town, just by virtue of the job description. I don't think there's any kind of statutory prohibition against that. It does limit, it will limit the pool of candidates too. We just have to keep that in mind. But then again, maybe there are a lot of qualified candidates within a certain radius. So.
Right. Well, I don't think this is something we need to do for this hiring, but maybe something that we need to put in our notes for future agendas and for maybe a time when we do get to sit down and, talk to Dave.
Yep. Okay. So a future question for Dave. Sue, would that be all right?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with Sue on that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's a good question for the future. And as we know, this needs to get advertised right away. So
So I will
motion was
vote
made.
Sue, aye.
Tom,
Okay.
I.
And Claire, we approve the advertisement as written.
We'll get this posted tomorrow.
Great. All right. All right. The next item of business was review of the cemetery job descriptions and discussion with cemetery commission.
Claire, can I interrupt you? I think
Sure.
I should be muted out on that because as my being my cousin, I don't think I should be in any discussion with that.
So even about the job descriptions?
I don't know. That's up to Margaret. What do you think, Margaret?
Tom, it's your choice. A recusal typically happens when you think there's going to be an appearance of a conflict of interest, or if there is any financial interest due to the involvement of a family member or yourself. So leave it to you. You could certainly disclose. I mean, you've disclosed that the person is your cousin.
Yeah.
And this is for the groundskeeper. Is this the groundskeeper job description? Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
don't know if he's gonna continue on that, so I don't wanna say anything and get us in trouble. That's all I'm
If you'd
saying.
like, Tom, if you'd like to recuse yourself, you can certainly do that and put yourself on mute for the discussion if that makes you more comfortable.
I think I should.
okay.
I don't
Want me to
wanna-
mute you?
Yeah,
I can mute, I can mute you.
Okay.
You could raise your hand if you need to be
Okay.
unmuted. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Tom's
All
muted.
right.
I'll pull up the job description. How's that?
Okay.
Can you
Okay.
see it?
Yep.
Unfortunately, when I'm sharing the screen, I can't see if Barry's going to join. He was invited to join, but when I'm sharing screen, I can't actually see the audience. So, oh yes, I can. Wait a minute, silly me. I can do that, but he's not here. Okay, I'll keep an eye
Okay.
out.
All right, great. So this first job description that we have for the maintenance contractor, Margaret, is this one that I guess one of my first questions, is this one of the job descriptions that when you go to do the procurement,
Mhm.
this is what you would use? Is that?
No, I actually reached out to Barry, and asked him to do a bulleted list from this job description, because
Okay.
we're not going to do a procurement with a job description format. We're going to do it on a bulleted list of services or tasks.
Okay. All right. So I guess one of my first questions, and I'm not sure, maybe it's on our list of questions that we have here. Should it really say contractor? Cemetery maintenance contractor in
Not for a job
the
description.
title of the job description.
No, not for a job
So-
description.
So it'd be cemetery maintenance worker, cemetery maintenance,
Cemetery maintenance.
I don't think it should say contractor. because I think that speaks to the whole, vendor thing, and we will be looking at that in the future. And right now, for a job description, I don't think it should say contract.
It's almost like this should be a laborer position, cemetery maintenance laborer, or, this would be a typical laborer position, I believe.
Yeah. Well, we can also look at, if we were to say cemetery maintenance worker, we could also look and see what other towns, what they, might, I had somebody's town report here and I can't find it. I was looking for it earlier today. Cemetery maintenance worker or cemetery maintenance laborer. Those are a couple of the titles we could use.
I'm gonna mark it up as you go, that way.
Okay,
Okay.
that'd be great. Yeah.
I'm just gonna name it, but either one, so you can
Yeah.
choose later.
No, thank you. That's great with the red, showing the tracking. Let's see. I know, Sue, I think you had some questions, right?
Well, if we're gonna go right down the list,
Okay.
I have just clarification. The first bullet that he has there, say perform most work of grounds. Accepting that one, the next 4 statements, I have trouble that they're a little specific on tasks, and they could change. Most work of grounds care is mowing the lawn and trimming grass, taking litter. It seems like that's what that is. Do we want to get that specific with exact tasks? I have a little difficulty with that. It could change next week. It could be a different task. It could be done differently.
This tends to touch on the formatting of a job description. For example, utilizing mowers to clear leaves in the fall. Typically, there's a section, there's a section in the job description that says equipment used, abilities, skills, things
Yep.
like that, where you'd kind of roll that down to that area.
Okay. All right. So one of the items, when you say that, so I'm looking at this and it's more, it should be more along the lines of maintains maintenance of all landscaping duties at the cemetery, something a little bit more instead of getting so detailed. Or do you find, Margaret, do you find that the more detailed job descriptions tend to work better for town workers? I mean, I don't want to take something out if we think that we need to be a little bit specific, but not too much.
You can add specificity under the essential duties. And it can be specific. But to Sue's point, there's really not a need to be overly specific. I really think this, again, this kind of reflects on the formatting of the job description. So you need to kind of cull out the essential duties and identify those rather than explaining how those essential duties are done. They are done under the direction or the supervision or the management of the cemetery superintendent or the cemetery commission.
Right, okay.
So, maybe it's, and I haven't had a lot of time to work on this. I mean, I could probably reformat this job description into the standard job description format where you would list the essential duties and then the skills, knowledge and ability and education and physical requirements and things.
Well, I think with everything that you have on your plate, I don't know. Sue, is that something that you might want to take a look at or that we could take a look at? I'm just not sure when I can get to it this week or but I didn't know what your time
I think
was like.
it seems to me like it would be pretty, like Margaret just said, something you just kind of look at and it's cut and dry. It's not a lot. I'm not saying I can't do it as well as Margaret can, but I would gladly do a rough draft if that's easier on her. But it might be.
I could share. I think you might have other job descriptions in Word, but I'm happy to share. Another somewhat similar job description that is formatted that way, and you could kind of.
All right, and then we could kind of call out the things that go under essential functions, the things that go under equipment to be used, things to go under requirements of job, things to go under. There were several things that Sandy had put in the job descriptions that, I left them in the other room, that I was reviewing.
There's, to think here. Yeah, and there might be other things that have to be added too, as far as assuring the utilities that are required at the cemetery, water. I don't know what else, but so there might be another couple of additions here.
Yeah, the one thing that I had taken a look at and I saw there was mention at the bottom of the job description on how much it cost for this, and let's see what it say. Payment for burials is $150 for full burials and $50 for cremation burials. I don't think that information needs to be in there for this particular position. As a cemetery maintenance worker or laborer. Also, labor for mowing and other work will be reimbursed by hourly rate to be determined, currently $32 an hour. I don't think we need to have that point.
That's not a typical wage for a groundskeeper. For a you know, for a town groundskeeper laborer position.
Right, right. And so I think one of the very last thing must maintain
I'm sorry,
um,
I have to scroll
personal
down. we go.
safety and liability insurance with a certificate
Oh,
to the town. Is that something that we would leave in the job description if it was going to be an employee of the town?
no, that would be for an independent contractor. So that is not something that would be in a
Okay.
town job description.
Right, okay, all right.
The employee would be insured by the town.
All right. So I think when I look at these job descriptions, I guess my question is that this job description, once we do it in the same format that Sandy was doing the job descriptions and do the essential functions and do the requirements of the job, that sort of thing. I guess I was trying to figure out, was George Pendergast, was he the cemetery superintendent?
Cemetery
prior to this?
superintendent. Yeah, and Barry provided that job description
Yes.
too.
Yep, yep,
So I don't know if you want to look at the, I can't split the screen, but do
that's
No,
all
but-
right, no, that's all
Before
right,
we go to the superintendent one,
yeah,
the other thing that, because I have one major question, I really think, couldn't this just be one position? That's something I want to bring up. I don't know if that's possible. But before we lose this screen, if we're going to have someone that's the maintenance laborer, should they be acting as a cemetery department representative when the superintendent is not present? Or should that be a commission member? I'm not sure that should be someone that is the maintenance person. I think that should, if the superintendent isn't there, I think one of the commission members should be present. Am I right? You can tell me I'm wrong. I won't be
Well,
offended.
No, I don't know, Sue. I can't answer that specifically. I don't know. This person, this position, this contractor, whatever it is we want to call it, has gone on, has done things on their own. I think probably referring major matters to the cemetery superintendent, whether
Right.
that's the correct way to do it or not, I really can't answer that. I guess my only question would be, why does there have to be a cemetery superintendent and a groundskeeper?
That's my
Okay.
question.
Okay, I was just, okay, so we have the same question.
right. But if we were to call the position a cemetery groundskeeper or a cemetery,
Barry's here. Barry's
oh,
here.
good,
I
okay,
will promote him.
beautiful,
He can answer these questions.
good, okay.
He should. Barry, you there? Let me stop sharing my screen for a second and then I could reshare it. Here he comes, here he comes.
Eric, yeah,
All right. I will share my screen again. Here it is.
Oh, God, that shouldn't be out.
I hear him. I hear you, Barry.
Yeah?
Oh, good, okay.
Oh, okay,
Can you see the screen?
there we are.
I need to put my mic on mute and my video off for a moment. I just have to go run an errand, but I'll be back in a moment. Oh, actually, I should wait till Barry. Barry, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, there he is. All right.
Okay. Oh, there he is. Okay, good. Thank you for coming. We have some questions for you on the job descriptions and how, you know, how, we'd like to find out from you, how you see these job descriptions and how you see this process working. We didn't know if there's a possibility that it could be one job. Is this a, like, for instance, a cemetery superintendent? Is that always been the job? Was that George's job? Was that the cemetery commission's job? I guess we're trying to find out a little bit more information about that, as well as the different things that those positions do.
Yeah, 50 years ago, the cemetery superintendent did much of the work in the cemetery. Did a lot of
Okay.
the mowing and all that stuff. And that went on for a good while, and they had a number of superintendents that did that. And John Nutting got the job in the late 1950s, and he had it until 1985. And he did much of the work himself. As he got older, he employed others to do a lot of the mowing and a lot of the maintenance stuff, and he did less of that. But he did a bit more supervisory stuff. But he certainly took care of the veterans' graves and the markers and things like that, and all the other things. And he arranged the burials and dealt with all that. Sold the lots, sold the graves to people that wanted to buy them, and handled the paperwork on all of those things, and turned in the money to the town treasurer and so forth to handle all that business. In 1985, he retired at the end as of the end of June, and George took over as of the 1st of July that year. And George tended to, of course, he was still teaching at Tohoto then. George tended to do a lot of his work with them, using young people to do a lot of the mowing and that kind of the legwork.
Yeah.
But he could supervise them and see to all of that. We had a period that they came up with the idea of sharing an employee between cemetery and highway. And that was done before I was on the board, and it was over with before I got on the board. I've been on for, I don't know, about 15 years now. And it was in that period that for a while that seemed to work pretty well. They had somebody who had been working as a kid for John and for George at the cemetery, and got on as a full-time employee with highway and was working for the cemetery. And then little by little it started to turn into there were more highway people coming in doing things and stuff. And they got into an issue at one point with over supervision, where the highway superintendent at the time decided that he should get paid something for supervising the cemetery. And they said, hold it, we already got a supervisor in the cemetery. We're sharing an employee, we're not turning over the whole thing. And so they ultimately got out of that arrangement, and then they came into this idea of hiring an independent contractor. They had Balance Rock Farm as their contractor for a number of years, and Balance Rock Farm did most of the mowing and work in the cemetery, handled things to do with the burials. We also have another contractor that we use for the backhoe operation to actually dig the full graves. And so that has developed over time. And then when Balance Rock Farm decided to stop doing it, then Mr. Guile came into it, and he offered to do it, and arrangements were made, and he had the job. It was he had worked for the town and done a little of the work when he was working for the town. And then he was working for Balance Rock Farm, and he did rather more of the work when he had Balance Rock, when Balance Rock Farm was doing it, because he was working at the farm too. And but Buddy sent him down to do a lot of the cemetery work, though Buddy did some of that himself too. At any rate, so he was hired in that capacity, and that's been continued. Subsequent to all of that, and after I was on the board, then Bobby ran for a seat that was available on the board and got elected. Now that produced an issue of conflict of interest, but at the same time, he had the job before he got that, before he was elected, and it was known publicly that he had the job and was doing that work before he got to be on the cemetery commission. At any rate, we have that as our situation, and I would say this too. He's an independent contractor. Part of the reason you go for independent contractors is to avoid some of your employee costs. And so therefore, the independent contractor has to provide things like health insurance and insurance, liability insurance, and all of that. So that's one reason why the hourly rate may seem a little higher than it would be if you had an employee. But if you had an employee, you'd also have your other employee costs. I don't know what kind of a percentage that you folks have on the employee costs, but I know that I mean, most people will say it's half of the pay or a third of the pay or whatever is the value of the employee benefits. And so since the person has to provide their own benefits, the amount that we pay for it is a bit more. On the other hand, I would submit that if we really applied carefully the issue of the expense of the burials, we're actually getting those cheaper than we would be if we were paying them at the hourly rate, because he gives us a flat rate on the burials normally, and that I think actually saves us some money. And he's the one who we hire somebody else to do the backhoe work and so forth, but he's the one who handles most of the rest of it, and most particularly cleaning up afterwards and completing the whole thing. And that also means, you know, completing it in the spring or whatever. Lots of times we will have more expense in the spring because of if we have to do winter burials, you can't do the final work on the site. It always has to go back in the spring and finish cleaning up the place and make it the way that you want it, and planting new grass or getting the sod back on. Those kinds of jobs sometimes have to wait till later in the winter burial. But all those things and the supervision of that and the planning of all of that is part of the job, as we've got it right now. We have not. George died in August. He had just 1 month of the current fiscal year, and we just decided Bobby and I would work together to handle the responsibilities that George did as commissioners for no pay.
Yeah.
To get for a while, because we wanted to get all the records in our hands and go through things and make sure we had them in good shape to hand to somebody else. And also we wanted to make sure that we also needed time to think about and decide how we want to organize it. And I'm happy to talk to personnel, because I'm looking for your advice on that too. Could we decide to hire one person and have them do most of the care, as well as buying and selling lots and administering the whole thing? Yeah, we could. Could we decide that we'd rather have a town employee do all of that rather than the independent contractor? And that is also on the table, and we're willing to talk about that too. At the moment, we've decided that we've gone through the end of the calendar year because it was a small enough amount of pay and cost. We weren't going to run over the $10,000 limit that requires to have it put out for quotes. So we're doing that now, putting it out for quotes for the rest of this fiscal year. But
Okay,
we also have in mind that we could decide to change how things are organized as of July 1st. And I understand that's part of what we're talking to you about, is to see, is you can give us some views. The other piece is that we've been paying George $3,300 a year, $3,360, something like that, $280 a month to be superintendent.
wow,
Plus, he also had some expenses. We paid for a cell phone for him, which enabled him to deal with things even if he wasn't home, or what, you know, he could continue to supervise it most of the time without any problem. And we have increased the amount that we allowed him to put in for expenses as a way to help him, but we haven't increased his pay in the whole 15 years that I've been on the board.
wow, okay,
So that's one of the reasons that his pay has really been low, certainly for the nature of the supervisory work that he's done. If he had to put other time in, and George was very resourceful, when we had repairs to do on mowers and stuff, lots of times he'd do them himself. And he'd get the parts and work on them himself if he could. Sometimes we'd have to send him out, but he a lot of the time would do that. And if he took time to do that kind of a job, he would put in a bill for his time. But in general, he was getting along on that small salary that I already mentioned.
okay,
And the fact that he's had the job for 35 years means that we haven't necessarily kept up to what we might have needed to be really fair. And he, as a retiree, was not looking for more money for taxable income.
nice,
Yeah. So that's kind of the conditions under which we got to where we are now.
okay,
We've known that we would have to look at some of these issues at the point that we had a transition, and it's interesting, but George, the nature of the position was such that you don't always have to do it right this instant, and you can wait an hour or you can wait till tomorrow on a lot of things. And he was able to keep the job and keep his boots on, and he really liked, even though he was up and down with his health at the end, he was really liked the fact that he had something to do that was worthwhile work. And so he kept this job right through, and we managed to have that work for him. After 35 years, we felt that was reasonable. Okay. Other questions? I can happily talk about it where you want to go. I will say that the mowing the cemetery is a little bit more specialized than most people would think. It's not mowing a field. You have to go around the gravestones, and you have to be thoughtful about the monuments and about the things that people put there. And it's a bit persnickety, and some of the big mowers that you use on a broad field, you can't really use in most of the cemetery because we have, there's too many gravestones and other obstacles in the way. So we've happened onto these walker mowers that we've been using in recent years, and they're a little bit smaller, very maneuverable, and that's what we now have, is two of those that are, one of them's 7 years old now, and the other is only a year and a half old. And so we've got two good machines, which we've been dealing with old stuff for quite a while, and we finally did get new ones. And we've gotten rid of, I think we have one of the older mowers left as a real backup, and we do keep that one in service. But if it comes to another time that it requires significant repair, we will probably not replace it. We will not keep it going. Are there questions about the work that we have them do, or I mean, it's really valuable to have somebody doing this work who knows understands where the lots are and understands where the graves are. And if we have a burial to do, we can say, okay, this is lot 241 in the South Cemetery, and it looks like it's probably going to be grave 8 in that lot or something. And the person has the information and can go and knows where they are and can direct the backhoe operator and so forth and handle it all. So if we have somebody entirely new, the commissioners will work on it to help them get familiar with things. But it certainly is valuable to have somebody that has built up some knowledge.
And you do have that all recorded, right, Barry? So
Yeah.
if there was someone new, they have all of that.
They can learn their way through our records. Each cemetery is quite different in the way that it's laid out. There's one section in South that's different from the rest of it. And then in the North Cemetery, we've got 4 areas, and it's pretty easy to figure out once you get the hang of it.
Okay.
But it does help if somebody's familiar. And over time, of course, if you're mowing out there, you see all the names on the stones, and you get to know where different lots are, and all those things come with a little experience. One of the things I'm doing now is checking all of the records to make sure that all of our sets of records agree with each other, and that that all of the burials that have been entered, and that kind of thing. Here and there, we'll find one that got missed, and we're just trying to make sure that they're all up to date for somebody to take over.
Should we go through the one for the job description for the superintendent? Unless you have any more questions, Claire, sorry.
No, that's
Yeah, that's
okay.
all right.
I'm good. I've been writing some stuff down here and I'm trying to think of things as I go. So Sue, if you do have that, that'd be great.
Well, the first thing I had was because I'm going right down the job description. Thank you, Margaret. I know this is not a full-time 40-hour job.
No, not
And to
full-
ask someone, provide 24/7 all the time. I just kind of like the clarification in that sentence that they communicate with you as the commission, that if they're not going to be available, that they arrange it with you for coverage. Is that,
yeah.
and you can tell me I'm wrong.
No. That's correct. And if they're really going to be away, then they would do that. Because of the people that have been involved in recent times, and George generally, if he really wasn't going to be available, he would arrange that with Bobby, because Bobby would be the one that would have to deal with the burial. So
Okay.
He has done more of that than I have. But yes, that's correct. And I mean, George, if he was anywhere that he could get cell phone service, he'd answer the phone and deal with people and inform our people about an upcoming burial and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
But-
so maybe that should just be a clarification or an addition to that sentence.
Yeah. Yes, we would put something there that they have to,
I think 24/7 could scare some good candidates away.
yeah. Well, it really is a 24/7 job. I mean, in terms of the regular thing, availability 24/7 is
Yep.
one of the things that's important. But if they are going, I mean, it doesn't mean you can't have a vacation.
Right. And then my next thing, Margaret, if I'm going to go right down the line, is the next 2 bullets, could they almost be considered one? I was just trying to,
Barry can answer that better than I, but this position description, along with the other one, has a lot of specificity, and it could be, this could be reformatted to show essential duties and kind of, just kind of identify those duties more succinctly rather than the, you know, the added details, and we could format it for abilities, skills, and all the other stuff too.
The first
Right,
part,
okay,
the first part of the third item is really the same as the second item. But the second part of it, the overseeing maintenance after interment, is
correct.
something that the superintendent would have supervision of the other employee to see to. That part could go with the first part.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it could be just combined a lot.
Yeah, I've done some of that. This was a list that we worked up actually a few years ago with the intent of, you know, creating the job description to work with your committee. And then it got laid aside and we never, it really was, all of the functions had been put into it, but we had never put it perhaps in final form before.
Excuse me, Claire, Barry, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah,
How
sure.
much overlap is, there's probably some overlap between the superintendent, some of the superintendent's duties and what the cemetery commission does, right? I mean, there's legwork between between the commission itself and the superintendent.
Most of the things that the superintendent does are done, again, the commission could set policy in regard to it, but in general, the work is done by the superintendent.
Okay.
The commission, I mean, the commission doesn't get directly involved in selling lots and handling the burials and that kind of stuff.
Okay, all
Normally,
right.
normally the superintendent does that. The only time that we get involved is if there's an issue that arises and the superintendent comes to the commission and says, okay, we've got this problem. Either a problem that somebody, a customer isn't happy, or that we have an issue that isn't covered by our regular policy and so forth. We do have a whole bunch of cemetery rules, which we've established that help to guide all of this, but from time to time, we'll have something else come up, and that's what he comes to us with. And he also reports to us each month with the finances. We sign the bills to the vouchers for the bills to go in and for the payroll for him. And also in that process, he also gives us his sheet that has the deposits with the treasurer. And those include all of the burials and all of the sales and those kinds of things, so that we're informed and know what's happening with those things. But we're not actually handling the business, the superintendent is.
So when you say superintendent, Barry, who are we talking about? Are we talking about the person who's doing the grounds?
No, we're talking about the position that George Pendergast had.
Okay, all right. And who's doing that now? Is it yourself that's doing that now, the commission?
Bobby and I are doing parts of this. The two of us
Okay.
are handling these things on a temporary basis. And
Okay,
that's what we did when we met after George passed. We said, look, we'd rather do it that way for a while so that we can make sure we know all of the things that we need to know and can pass that information on to somebody that gets the job.
yeah, okay. I thought that's what I heard you say, but then when I heard you talking about the superintendent this and this, I just wanted to make sure that I heard that right. Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, we're handling these things ourselves. And I mean, a couple of more items down the line is the business about the flowers for Memorial Day. And there's one that I'm going to go back to Mrs. Pendergast for some advice and assistance with, because she and George have handled that for us for quite a while, and we need to make sure we know what we need to know in order to do it.
Okay, I have one clarification question.
Sure.
Just because I looked at, if I don't know something, I tend to look it up. The burial agent,
Yeah.
is that involved, when I look at Massachusetts state laws, that has to do with Board of Health. Now, do you have to work with the Board of Health? Or is it okay for a person from the cemetery commission, like the superintendent, to act as such?
Okay, the way that that works under state law is that, and it's a section of state law on the disposal of dead bodies. And it is charged as part of the Board of Health's responsibilities. But in many towns, in most towns, in fact, I'm finding out, it actually has been turned to the town clerk to do.
Right, okay,
But to
that's
do
how I
with
read it.
deaths anyway. So
Yeah.
what happens is the death certificate is issued by the town clerk,
Yeah,
and the burial permit is also issued by the town clerk in Berlin and in many of our communities. Not all,
Okay.
but most. And I think this goes back to the time that the Board of Health was the Board of Selectmen, before we had a separate Board of Health. None of the people in the Board of Health know anything about this, because I've asked them. Because when I read the records, I went and asked people and talked to people to find this out.
Okay,
So in most places, and in the list of the annual appointments of the selectmen, which really in this case should be Board of Health, is agent to issue burial permits. Not the burial agent, but the agent to issue burial permits. And that is, the town clerk is appointed to that position.
That's
okay,
all done,
that's-
and by the way, that's all done electronically now through the Bureau of Vital Statistics in Boston, through the town clerk's office.
Okay, that's how I read what I looked up. So I'm just verifying what I saw.
Yeah, and you're right, it's supposed to be Board of Health, but as I say, that's something that they had delegated many years ago. I mean, 50 years ago, or before that they'd done that. And,
Okay,
because we get the burial permits, which need to be signed by the superintendent and returned to the town where the death came from. And that's still one we're finding our way through, but yeah.
okay. And then when you go through the description, so if you have a superintendent that is not a veterans, you need to find someone that will act as the veteran coordinator. And you
That's
can do that through our local Veterans Association, I would suspect.
Yeah, I think that in this case, we would simply recommend to the selectmen somebody else to be appointed to that.
Okay,
And we might have one of the commissioners do it, have that as an official thing, you know?
right.
But we did put it in there because George has been the Veterans Graves Officer. And it's interesting, John wasn't a veteran, but John was in the Sons of Union Veterans years and years ago. So he was tied up with a veterans organization. But at any rate, George has had the position, and we know that if we get one that's not, we wrote that in there so we wouldn't forget about that if we hired somebody that wasn't.
So you are saying that there is a possibility that if we took these two lists that you have and combine them into one job and put it in a description that other job descriptions are in the town, that you would consider making it one position?
I think we could. We've basically left it that we are not positive yet what we want to do, and we've really still got another 6 months, or 5.5 months to get it figured out before we start the new fiscal year. But yeah, we're open to considerations of this sort. And the idea that it might become the whole thing would be an employee of the town. One of the things that does get into this that's a little bit of an issue is the whole part-time nature of it. It's not a full-time thing. The superintendent's job, sometimes you'll have things to do 2 or 3 days in a row, and sometimes you'll have a week that you don't have to do anything.
right,
And
right.
sometimes on some burials, I've spent 3-4 hours or more dealing with the arrangements on the burial. And on one burial. And then other times they go lickety split and you might spend 20 minutes or half an hour on the whole thing.
And how long do you think, or can you average that it takes to mow the cemeteries in town in the summer? You know,
Yeah. That's a question I'd have to talk to Bobby about.
I know how long it takes me to mow this place.
That's right, yeah.
Right. And we do accept that, of course, the conditions and if the weather enters into it and all, then all of a sudden how do you arrange it and how the time works is
Right.
different.
And,
Yeah. Yep.
and the plow is with the town truck, correct?
We plow with
If
the
you need
town
it.
truck.
Okay,
We have a shared truck. When they were gonna turn in their last 1-ton dump truck, we worked with the selectmen and kept that truck. It's listed in the highway equipment, but we use it for burials, and we use it for snow plowing, and we use it to tow our trailer. We have a trailer that we tow around to move mowers from one cemetery to another and that kind of thing too.
Yep.
and I have a lot of questions.
That's all right.
That's
just-
fine, so,
If we can scroll down, I just have
Yep.
one thing that kind of makes me a little uncomfortable with.
Let me see if I can, oh, there it is. Okay, hold on. All right.
There's a line that says to approve monuments and headstones for placements in lots and on graves. That's a written policy, right, Barry? To me, it looks like one person is going to make this decision, which I don't think we should have in a town employee. Does the commission have a policy about monuments and headstones?
Not extensively detailed. We do have some mention of it in our established rule,
Okay,
and we do, and issues do arise from time to time about somebody that wants to do something that doesn't quite fit the rule. And those are the kinds of things that do come to the commission to consider. And the superintendent carries things out according to the rules, and if the superintendent has a concern about all of that, it'll come to the commission for a decision.
okay. No, I was hoping that it was a written policy, like you just said, and not that this one individual makes approvals.
No, but he's the one who carries out the policy on that.
Yep,
And in fact, we've got a thing right now that we have under consideration. A new rule that we're going to make is about the height of monuments. And we're going to set I think a maximum height of 4.5 feet. And if anybody wants anything bigger than that, they've got to have an approval, a written approval from the commission. And the
No,
reason
that's-
we get that is that the way things are in North Cemetery, if you put a great big tall thing in there, it's entirely unfair to your neighbors. And if we, at the same time in the South Cemetery, we have if somebody's got a big 10 grave lot and they want to put in a taller monument, we've got plenty of them there, and it would be perfectly permissible to do that.
no,
Right.
that's,
We have put that one in that's going to require, that rule has been discussed at our last 2 meetings, and about the time we have our next meeting, we will probably make that as a formal rule.
no, that makes me feel better that there's a policy. I didn't want one individual making approvals.
Sue, I added, through the chair, Sue, I added right after on graves, according to established policy and with the
Perfect.
approval of the commission.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
That looks good.
So maybe if Claire and I and Margaret have some time, we'll put this down as one position and then maybe do one as two and then present them to Barry. How's that sound, Claire?
That sounds good to me. I think we can get that done. Barry,
Yeah.
what do you, does that sound okay to you?
I think so. I mean, I've got to talk to Ruth and Bobby, you know, we'll take it up at a meeting. But
Okay,
yeah, and I will
Hi,
say that
Finance Committee.
Bobby has
You
participated.
have a quorum of 3 at the moment, and Dave is here for his budget meetings, so
oh, okay,
finishing up a personnel committee meeting, so I'm
all
gonna
right, okay,
just have to jump over there for 1 second, but if you'd like to go ahead and start, I'll start recording for you. How's that?
okay. Okay, I didn't realize it was so late. So,
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I thought I muted.
I think I have most of my questions answered.
okay,
Okay,
Barry, was there any other questions before we try to adjourn so Margaret can get to her next meeting?
no, that's fine with me. And again, I'm really looking for counsel from you
Okay, yeah,
in terms of the, you know, what you think our best route is to go, in terms of whether we should do this as one position or continue the way that we've done it, or maybe even make the grounds person a town employee rather than a contract person.
okay,
Any of those things that we could be open to if you know, my thing is, hey, convince me this is a good idea.
okay. All
And
right,
we have always tried to keep costs down, so
yeah,
we're looking for ways to do things without having it cost the town a lot more money.
okay. So Sue, we will look for those other job descriptions. We'll take a look at it and try and fit some of this in there, and then we can have the next conversation about, you know, what our thoughts are on the 2 different positions and or just the one position.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion before we adjourn? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting so that Margaret can get to her next
I'm
meeting.
sorry.
That's
I
all
thought
right.
I had you on mute. I'm so sorry.
No worries at all. I think we're good. I think we're gonna move ahead and take a look at the job descriptions and take a look and do 2 and then do 1 and see what we think might be.
And maybe if we get some job descriptions from another town too, Claire.
Yeah,
I think I can get one from Bolton or something.
oh, good.
Then
Okay,
I'll send you out those red lines, the little markups I did tonight. I'll get you
Okay.
those tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
and we'll
Thank
take
you.
a look at the other job descriptions in the other formats.
The other thing is about pay. When Margaret and I first talked about this back in the summer, it was, you know, there's the issue of pay and what's reasonable and so on, especially for the superintendent position, because it's been so long since we've really considered that.
Yeah,
And I'm not.
Yeah, we
looking to
can,
Make our
we'll look at
budget
that
less.
too.
At the same time, we're trying to figure out how to do it well for the town.
okay,
All right.
all right.
Thank you.
Hearing no other business, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
I second that. Oh, he's muted.
Oh, okay, Tom. Okay,
Okay,
So all those in favor of adjourning? Aye,
Sue, aye.
all right.
I.
Okay, so we're adjourning at 7:34 PM. And Barry, thank you very much for coming to our meeting. And if we have questions, we know where to find you.